welcome to the county seat. I'm your host, Chad Booth. This week we're going to talk about wildfires. They're in the news a lot. We are at the Great Basin Coordination Center where all of the federal state agencies coordinate how they manage these multiple fires that take place across our state and the region. We will discuss some of the challenges, issues, things leading up to fires, things that can prevent fires. First, we're going to give you a little background on the history of how agencies work together.
The continuing trends of large, hot-burning fires that strip the forest right down to bare, scorched earth are becoming a huge problem across the West. Over the past decade, throughout the nation, there has been an average of over 70,000 fires with 6.54 million acres burned each year.
This year in Idaho, we burn up another 1,700,000 acres. Last year it was almost 2 million. And you know, we continue to add fuel load in the forest and expect that it won't burn. Well, it is burning, and that's not a good way to manage the forest. You know, it's not good for the environment, it's not good for wildlife habitat, it's not good for the watershed, it's not good for the economy.
The forests are in the worst condition they've been in 50 years. We've got forests that are burning down, then you have the fire and the devastation. We're seeing it now. Huntington Canyon, after the fire, you then devastate the watershed for generations. That's the road we're on now.
For the first time since flames roared in Huntington Canyon, Utah is again facing a disastrous fire as the blaze at Brian Head continues to grow. A number of local government officials, researchers, and land managers in neighboring states have suggested that there's a better way to manage the forest, where fuels are removed and put to good use.
Back in the late 1800s and early 1900s, I think some of the, there was clear cutting, and people were, going in and just taking timber and the like, and so there needed to be a change then, but I think we've gone too far. I would be happy if we could actually manage the land, and actually do what's environmentally correct for the resource, rather than burn the land and kill the wildlife in the catastrophic fires.
Researcher Holly Fretwell says it's not that local federal officials are callous to the problem.
These individuals really care about the land, but they can't do anything. They can't get out there and do any restoration because all these different stakeholders are holding them and fighting against each other, and so nothing's getting done. So the default on our public lands now is no action.
In Idaho alone, if we were harvesting the sustainable yield, we would be creating about another 20,000 jobs. Plus we would have the impact of the revenue from the sale of that product. It is a huge economic impact to all the western states.
Some states, such as Arizona, have found ways to mitigate the impact of catastrophic wildfires. After the 2011 Wallow Fire, Apache County, Arizona passed a resolution asserting its authority to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Apache citizens. Their resolution resulted in coordinated efforts with the Forest Service to thin the problem areas in the forest.
What we've discovered is we've ended up finding a lot of ways that we can actually co-manage lands productively and get along together, and we're sharing resources that neither party realized the other had.
The end goal of local officials is to find ways to reduce fuels in the forest, to stop catastrophic fires, and create a balance where the forest is an asset instead of a liability. For the county seat, I'm Malia Stringham.
We'll be back with our panel of experts to talk about this in detail right after this commercial break on the county seat.
149 million years in the making, dinosaurs once roamed this land. Now they're found at the Dinosaur National Monument. Let's take you beyond the bones. We call it Dinosaur Land. You'll find it offers adventures and sights not seen anywhere else in the world. Come to Dinosaur Land, Vernal, Utah. You'll want to stay forever. The dinosaurs did.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah Valley? Explore the Wasatch Mountains? Snap a family photo at Bridal Veil Falls. Cool off on Utah Lake or the Provo River. matter what you're searching for, you can find it in Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
The Layton Hills Mall offers more than just shopping. Bring the whole family and enjoy SeaQuest Interactive Aquarium to feed the fish and exotic birds, hold live reptiles, and even swim with the stingrays. Or pump up the action and visit Dartside, Utah's premier soft foam dart tag arena. And don't forget the Great Room Escape, where you can challenge your friends to solving mysteries inside themed rooms. So come and experience great fun at the Layton Hills Mall and visit playindavis.com for other great activities.
All local products have a story of magical places, real people, and delicious recipes spanning generations. So go ahead and discover flavors you've never tasted and friends you never knew you had. Utah's own Discover Local Food.
Welcome back to the county seat. We're talking today about the wildfire situation in Utah, and we're trying to dissect exactly how all of this fire coordination works. And of course, part of it is looking at the picture on the ground before the fire starts. Joining us for our conversation is Jessica Wade from the Bureau of Land Management. Thank you for joining us, Jessica. We have Brooks Chadwick, an easy name for me to remember, from the U.S. Forest Service, and Jason Curry from the Utah State Division of Forestry and State Lands. Thank you all for joining us. I feel like I at least made one good choice. I wore khaki today.
Nice.
So we kind of all fit in. So I do want to ask the question, because there's been a lot of conversation about, oh, this fire is this fire started that way. What are the conditions, the big picture that contribute to catastrophic fires getting a hold and taking off and being headlines for a week or two?
Well, I just like to say that we get back to the basics a lot in fire, and fuels, weather, topography are the three things that make a fire run. Mm-hmm. And so fuels, either trees in the forest, grasses, brush. Weather is hot and dry, windy. And topography, when you have steeper terrain, the fire obviously runs up a lot quicker. And in general, that's what we have. Either you have really windy conditions or you have steep terrain, and that all contributes to fire growth in general.
So what are the anomalies that put the conditions for our big fire down at Bryan Head? What were the things that contributed to that for this year?
Jessica talked about those three factors, and all three of those factors are at high levels. We're recovering from drought. There's been hot, dry weather for years. This year was an exception to that, but we are still recovering of long-term effects. There's a lot of fuel buildup, so it's thick in there. And then it's real steep. This is steep country. So all three of those factors really are at a high level.
Well, I'm trying to look at things on a broader landscape scale, not just the Bryan Head fire, but in the country as a whole, especially the West, we're just seeing increases in the amount of vegetation on the landscape. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. Some of that could be from less and less Native American burning that occurred, long before all the settlement was here in the West. And then, we've done fire suppression for over 100 years now, and we're pretty good at it, right? So even though we may miss 3% of the fires that become larger fires, we've been so good at it now that vegetation didn't have its natural cycle to be able to burn on its own at lower intensities and keep things in check the way Mother Nature would like it. And I think that's contributed greatly to the fires that we're seeing now, larger fires. And then I think our seasons, we notice in the last 20 years, our seasons are longer. We're starting fire season earlier, and fire season goes later. And I would say even in the last almost 24 months, we've had a year-round season, especially with the fires we're seeing in Georgia and North Carolina last year. And so, it's just a combination of factors. It's not just one thing.
Is it also that there are more people in the forest?
Oh, absolutely. There's more people to start fires, right? So 200 years ago, maybe we didn't have that many fires because it was all just lightning caused. But now there's so many people, they live in the woods, they recreate in the woods, and they're a big source of our fire starts.
Would you say it's more than half?
Some years.
Yeah.
Most years it's more than half.
Okay, very good. We're going to take a break. We'll be back with the county seat in just a minute. Continue our conversation about the wildfire situation here in the state of Utah.
Look south to adventure. Look south to beauty. look south to San Juan County. Out here, the road goes on forever, and what you'll find will change how you see the world. Climb on your OHV and discover forgotten landscapes and vistas that challenge the imagination. From Blanding and Monticello to the cliff faces of Monument Valley, we're open and ready for you to explore. San Juan County, Utah's Canyon Country.
There's a little place on a Utah map where I was raised, where my heart's at, where the sagebrush grows wild and high, and the stars come out at night. Oh, there ain't nothing like being raised in the basin with a Ute reservation, skiing starvation, that Duchesne County life.
Are you ready for some rodeo? July 13th, 14th, and 15th is the Ute Stampede Rodeo in Nephi, Utah. 8 p.m. nightly, more than 2,000 new seats added to that amazing facility. Cotton Rosser, the legend, brings the livestock to challenge the RCA Cowboys, the entertainment, the Flying U Flying Cowboys, along with Emmanuel Latza, who will be there to perform acrobatics over Mexican fighting bulls. July 13th, 14th, 15th. We'll see you at the Ute Stampede.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking today about wildfires across the state. We have representatives from all the agencies that have trees on their ground with us to talk about it. What I would like to talk about is, obviously we have headlines with a big fire. I know we had a bunch of small fires that hit northern Utah the last couple of days. What are your respective agencies doing to combat the various flames currently burning? And when you get multiple fires burning all at once, like last Saturday, there were like 4 up in northern Utah burning at the same time. What kind of stress does that put on your resources?
Well, I would say we have a set number of resources that are stationed throughout the state, regardless of whatever agency it is that they actually work for and get a paycheck from. And we coordinate all that in the wintertime to know, all right, who's covering this, who's kind of covering that, and we really just try to erase as much as we can our ownership lines or our agency specific. And remember that when we show up on a fire, regardless of what color of vehicle you drove there in or what emblem's on the door, you still step out with a yellow Nomex shirt and green Nomex pants. And we're all the same, we're all firefighters. And so what we do currently is, as those fires get called in to our dispatch centers, they get prioritized based off a number of factors, but they're prioritized so we know which one deserves or needs the most resources or what types of resources. And it doesn't matter who those resources belong to, it's usually the closest forces so that we get there the quickest and we're not waiting for something to drive from a really long distance. And that occurs on a small local scale throughout Utah. But then there's a grander scheme of things, right, outside of that where we look at things on a regional scale. And it's the same thing. If we need to move some things from Idaho to come to Utah to help us because they're not busy, then we can call and make that request and they'll come help us. And then that goes to a national scale. If we need to move something from Georgia to come to Arizona, it's the same thing. It's a request. And it's all based off of priorities, which is usually values at risk. So usually homes or life, safety. There could be infrastructure, power lines, things that reach out to a greater to the greater good, and we need to protect those.
When somebody says we have, you guys must have an Army base with 3,000, four-wheel drive pumpers, and an airfield that's got 22 DC-10s parked at it, ready to fight fires. What kind of resources do you actually have to fight fires?
There's resources all over the state, from your volunteer fire departments in the county all the way up to aviation resources that are contracted to the federal government, fire crews and everything else. So there's a lot there, but there isn't one centralized base where everything is, and the supply is not unlimited. The supply has moved around quite a bit depending on the expected demand for firefighting need.
If one air tanker, because I remember there was a mishap a couple of years ago, if you lose one air tanker, how much does that affect your ability to fight fire from the air?
Well, one air tanker isn't going to make the difference on fire season, right? Any given year, we could have, say, 20 to 25 or so different air tankers. It just depends on the particular year and what transitions we're in. So one air tanker lost is not going to make or break our season. You might feel the pinch a little bit, but it's not going to ruin you. I think to put it into perspective for Utah would be, you know, everyone talks about hotshot crews, and they're an elite group of firefighters, and they're well trained and they're physically fit, and we like to have them. That doesn't mean they're the only thing out there, but to put it in perspective, there's only 5 of those that would normally be stationed in Utah. And I think currently we're up around 20 that are here helping with fires in Utah. So that just shows you the amount of resources elsewhere. When they're not busy, they come to the places that are busy. And Utah and Arizona are busy right now.
When you get these multiple fires burning, and you talked about, well, we allocate so many resources to this one. Have you ever gotten to a situation where you initially sent 1,600 people to one, and then you say, ooh, this is developing over here. Well, they're just going to have to get by. We're pulling 200 out and sending them to another fire. Does that happen?
Yeah, we have a process that we use not only on actual or individual fires, but in a geographic area. We're sitting here in the Great Basin Coordination Center, and we prioritize fires here. And they're based on firefighter and public safety, infrastructure, community infrastructure, and watersheds and things communities need, and then natural resources and important habitats and other important natural resources there. So we have a matrix, and we do all that very scientifically every day, twice a day.
Well, you know, when we walked in today, I was kind of half expecting to see like a war room somewhere with a little electronic maps and little flames burning on it and stuff like that. But I did see a lot of computer screens out here, so.
Right.
Well, you would see those at the local centers. That's where the real action is, and that's where they're dealing with the actual individual fires. Where this center being a coordination center, it's just to help move resources. So my local center dealing with fires would call here and say, hey, I need another helicopter, I need 2 crews, and they'll go out in the world and find them for us and then send them to us. That's the role of this place.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
Well, and I just wanted to say how we work together nationally, not just in Utah, but nationally. But before the fire, also, there's a whole lot of work that we do that occurs. I mean, 80% of our work occurs before the fire and getting prepared. And one of those is landscape vegetation projects. We work together. We're really proud of the Watershed Restoration Initiative, the partnership that occurs there. That's fuels treatment to help either slow fires or just keep them small in general when we have a healthy landscape. We do interagency training all the time, drills. Our dispatch is interagency. We work together. And then, of course, Brooke mentioned the fire suppression, wildfire suppression. And then after the fire, we work together as well in repairing the land and making it so that we can control the erosion. I mean, I'm really proud of the partnership that we have in Utah with my counterparts here and the other federal agencies. It's an amazing way we work together, and it helps us be efficient and effectively respond to wildfires, wildfires and pre-wildfire. I just can't emphasize enough that there is really no agency boundary when it comes to wildfire.
So that kind of paints another question in my mind that I think people would like to know about, and that is, we know that you all work together, and the state forestry's got crews out there working, and BLM has got crews, and Forest Service has got crews, and sometimes you'll even have the National Guard helping out. We've seen that happen before. So when you get to that situation, how does that actually look on the ground? Is it like guy number 1 is next to guy number 2 with the shovel, and they have 2 different badges on, or
sure.
do you kind of say, okay, well, BLM's crew will take this canyon, and Forest Service will take this one, you guys work the ridge line? How does that work?
It operates under unified command, or a single incident commander, and no matter where the resources come from, they all fall into place and perform their role. And Brooks, a Type 2 incident commander, has done a lot of big fires and probably can explain how that works a little better.
I would say each resource, we call it. So an engine shows up, an engine crew shows up. Well, probably all the people on that engine belong or work for one agency. So let's say that's Forest Service, right? So if 3 engines show up, one state, BLM, and Forest Service to an area of the fire, each individual engine is going to work together as a cohesive unit. But now those 3 groups will work, those 3 engines will work together on a section of line that they need to, or to work on, you know, this canyon. And they'll work together. So they are mixed up as a resource. It doesn't matter the color of the truck that they're in, but each truck has.
So they work kind of like a platoon, and the platoons get intermixed with the companies.
Sure.
Okay.
Based on what the experience is and what the capability is of that resource, they'll be placed.
Very quick last question. What is unique about the Brian Head Fire?
It's not really unique when you look at it historically. Going back in time, we've had bigger fires than this. We've had a lot of fires that size, and I think that's really the takeaway. Folks lately haven't seen fires this big in timber, but over time, it's really not that unique.
It seems unique probably to the people that are nearby or adjacent to that fire because they haven't maybe seen one of that scale for some time. But for us that we see fire nationally every day all summer long for many, many years, it's not that unique, really.
These occur every day in the summer throughout the West and actually in the East as well. And it just depends on where that fire is and at the time and the community that it's impacting.
Okay, I think that's a good answer. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with the county seat.
It's one more, here we go again. I tell myself I'm not in love, but one more time is not enough. One last kiss and then you were gone, and I'm here wishing you could stay a little longer. Stay a little longer. Wishing you could stay a little longer.
There is a place where looking out means looking in, where an impression lasting only a few seconds will be imprinted on a life forever, where courage is forged and innocence rediscovered, where remembering is rewarding and forgetting unforgettable. There is a place where truth is felt and where seeing is believing. There is a place.
The Utah Farm Bureau began as a collection of farmers supporting each other to raise the food we enjoy. Today, Farm Bureau membership encompasses everyone, whether ranchers, growers, or just everyday folks like you and me. Members enjoy discounts on items like vehicles and ATVs, or insurance that's very affordable. You don't have to be a farmer to join, and dues are small, but together we make a big difference in keeping our food supply local and abundant. Join Utah Farm Bureau.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking about wildfires. We have covered so far what the agencies are doing, got a picture of how they work together. Now, it's the rest of us. We have a part in this. What is it?
Well, the part is that everyone that's a member of this state needs to be careful with fire. And unfortunately, so many of our fires are caused by humans for activities such as fireworks, campfires that they don't fully extinguish before they leave, driving ATVs or motorcycles without spark arresters, debris burning. Those are the types of activities that cause over 50% of the fires in Utah. And those are so preventable. It's just a common sense use of fire, and we're in some pretty severe fire conditions in some areas throughout the state, not everywhere. And with this holiday weekend, a good reminder is fireworks, because that will be occurring starting Saturday. And you know, fireworks are just never allowed on any federal public land, and that's something that we want you to not even bring to the forest or the BLM, but to be careful with it even in your neighborhood or wherever you live. And so the public can really make a huge difference in the number and damage of wildfires if they're just careful with fire.
Absolutely. And like Brooke said, on BLM lands and Forest Service lands, we do not allow fireworks, or in BLM lands, we don't allow exploding targets at all, because those are obvious fire starters.
Yeah, didn't we have one last summer that was started by somebody with target practicing out on West Mountain?
We've had several this year.
Yep, already.
Target shooting, both exploding targets, tracer, and just regular shooting in areas of rocks and dry grass. 90% of the fires this year have been human caused. So that's a really alarming statistic. I mean, you look at average, we are around 50% in the state every year. We're sitting at 90 now. People need to slow it down. If you look at your activities, and we look at some of these fires that have been started by people, they're remorseful, and they're looking back on their actions, and in hindsight realize they did something careless, something negligent that led to the fire, and so it's a good time to second guess yourself.
And just be aware. I mean, I think people, when they're out there, we want them to enjoy the public lands and the forests. I mean, we have an amazing state that is, it's just beautiful. And when people are out there recreating or driving around or working, whatever it is, that you're aware of all the grasses or the fuels, the conditions, if it's windy, hot and dry, that you're paying attention and doing the right thing.
So if you build a campfire ring, you've kind of cleared the area and you've got a little campfire going and the wind starts to pick up, your advice would be, well, maybe we should just put this out until a little bit later?
Right, and I would also say that we have a website, utahfireinfo.gov, that has a lot of information, and it also has the fire restrictions information. And in a lot of counties and in BLM lands, we do not allow campfires outside of designated campgrounds. I mean, that's another big cause of our fires, is escaped campfires that are in primitive areas.
Well, as you say, 90% caused. Is part of that attributable to the fact that we just have this huge fuel load because of all the rain we got late into the season this year?
Well, it's just a pure statistic. The fuel loading has made those fires less easy to manage and catch, but the ignitions really are what we're focusing on. We've had 90% of our ignitions based on human activity.
Wow.
Yeah, and last year we didn't have the grass crop that we have this year when you're talking about fuel loading, and we still had almost 100 escaped campfires here in northern Utah alone. So it's not that's the issue.
So it is a big problem. Well, thank you all for taking your time. Thank you for inviting us into your home. Remember, local government is where your life happens, so be involved, be part of the solution, and don't shoot off fireworks. Have a happy 4th of July.